Welcome to today's Black Music Month discussion with Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick of Florida. Currently serving her second term, she is the first Black woman to represent Florida's 20th Congressional District. My name is Sierra Lever, and I'm the head of hip hop and R&B for Amazon Music. And today we'll be discussing Black Music Month as a part of DIMA's ongoing series exploring Black music and leadership in politics and entertainment. Congresswoman, it's a pleasure to have this time with you. I know you're booked, I know you're busy, so let's just get into it. I'm excited to hear from you.
Thanks.
So let me first ask, how are you doing today?
I'm excellent. You know, we had a long ride today, but I'm excellent. I'm excited to be here. And it's not very often I get to talk about the correlation between music, emotions, humanity, and really where we're moving this country forward to. So I'm excited.
No, I love that. You know, every day waking up is a great day for me as well. So let's talk about the first Black artist you heard. Do you remember that day? What was that song, that album, and what really stood out to you in that moment?
You know, I don't remember the first because all I know is Black music growing up, especially growing up in a Caribbean household. All you know is the music, the live music, especially. My parents were Haitian, so there's a lot of live music we would hear. And growing up in New York, I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens. And so I do remember the first album that I bought. And I was so taken when I saw Salt and Pepper and they were doing Tramp. They were singing Tramp and it was on Video Music Box. And I was like, the first time I saw Black women actually rapping and they were so good. And the horns in the background were the same horns that I heard in Haitian music before. And the producer, Freddie Lovebug or whatever, he actually was Haitian. So I knew the horns. I loved how they were rapping. I just loved how strong they were and the control they were taking. So that was the first album I bought. I remember going to Jamaica Avenue and going and buying their album and it was burgundy. And I was like, oh, even that was feminine to me because albums are usually Black. And here's this burgundy album. And it was like just so empowering. So that was the first album I bought, the first group that I was like, yes, this is it. And we did a talent show and I even did Salt and Pepper because I was just so excited.
Oh, I love that. I mean, those ladies, they've been rocking it for years. So, you know, when you speak about Black artists and Black music and the crossover of genres and cultures and geographic lines, you know, Black music and the Black artists who have been creating music has never been more popular than today at this point, as we're seeing the crossover and the blending. And Black artists tend to routinely be at the top of the charts. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that there's a part of humanity, like for us, for Black people, music has been the one staple that was never taken away from us. When we were forced to come to the US or the Caribbean, you know, we were still able to play our drums. We were still able to sing. It seemed like everything else was stripped from us and our dignity, but we had that. And so even if you look at the Haitian Revolution, you know, what triggered them to let them know this is time to fight? It was the drums. If you look at, you know, even during slavery in the time, what did Harriet Tubman do to let everybody know, hey, we're actually going to escape? She sung Wade in the Water and everybody knew, go out to the water. So I think, you know, we've always used music as our tool to talk about our emotions and how we feel, but also to give us hope and inspiration. And I think that's the biggest difference with Black music. We're always pouring into the hope for tomorrow. We're always pouring into what we're desiring. You know, I remember growing up, you know, we were latchkey kids. And so you had to let yourself in. Your family was always working. And, you know, we kind of looked out for ourselves. And so if you hear a lot of the music of the time, it's more about, you know, we're going to make it out. One day we're going to have that money. And even the songs that you hear us singing, because I'm like, you know, what was I doing singing Mary J. Blige, Real Love at like 13? You know, what did I know about that back then? But it goes back to the, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Everyone needs to feel accepted. Everyone needs to feel family, love. And when you don't have that, you know, your alternate means of getting out there is through music. Whereas, you know, now we have a different culture where you see more TikToks and you have social media where people can express their emotions and how their feelings and their ideas. But for many of us, it was just music. That was our avenue. I think that's why, because we could connect to everyone.
Oh, that's beautiful. Some of the things that you just touched on between hope and inspiration and connectivity, access, you know, not everyone knows that the month of June is Black Music Month. So my next question is twofolded. First part of this is, why is Black Music Month important to you? And then secondly, can you talk a little bit about its larger cultural relevance of celebrating Black Music Month?
Well, I think Black Music Month is important to the entire nation because, as I mentioned, there was a time when our music actually was getting stolen from us. We could still participate in music, but if you remember, even in rock and roll, a lot of the music that Elvis Presley was singing, a lot of our music back then was being attributed to other people and not from us. So it was being taken from us. But the fact still remains that we need to celebrate and recognize those times where we took back our narrative, where we took back, this is the Black experience. This is what it feels like to be in America. And you have to actually pay attention to that. And I always tell people that, you know, when you're experiencing something and it comes out through music, what that tells me is that, hey, most people are suffering it. And so we need to pay attention to what people are singing about, what they're rapping about, because this is more of a sign that this is what the times are. So I think it's very important that we celebrate. We not only celebrate the time when we took back our narrative and we started talking about who we are and how we feel, but we recognize the past and we make sure it doesn't happen again. You know, my great state of Florida, we have people who are pushing this narrative that Black people benefited from slavery, which is absolutely false. And if you hear the stories and what we were singing, you hear the suffering. So if your narrative is correct, then why are we suffering and talking about death in our families and asking God to save us? So I think that's why it's important that we remind ourselves who we are as a nation and what we're not going back to.
No, completely. I mean, you hit so many points there. There's the idea of Black erasure, whether it's music or fashion, entertainment, making sure that we take hold of those narratives, and there's the credibility that's given and the compensation that's given and the history that transcends from yesterday, today, and into tomorrow. My next question goes into more so your world of politics, and one asking, is there any advice that you can give to those aspiring to hold a career in politics, and any sort of leadership advice that you can share in that space?
Well, the biggest thing I always advise people is evaluate why you want to run. You know, some people think that it's glamorous and you get to be in charge and you're the boss. I have news for you. It is not glamorous. You are not the boss. Every day you're reminded that you are a public servant and you do this for the love of people. But if you do have the right motive, it usually comes through some injustice that you suffered, something that you felt like wasn't fair, and something that you might even be ashamed of. I mean, for me, when I was raising my daughter, I was a single parent, and I just felt like resources weren't available. There were certain things you didn't talk about. I was going through law school, you know, just trying to get things for my daughter. At that time, we started seeing more kids who were being diagnosed with attention deficit, autism. And because it was so new to me, I was kind of like ashamed about it. I didn't want to talk about it. But then I realized that more and more moms in school were suffering the same thing. More kids were suffering the same thing. And that one thing that kind of made me ashamed that I was going through this by myself is the one thing that a lot of people were able to connect with. And so I always say that the deepest pain, the most injustice that you face, more likely than not, there are other people who are suffering the same thing. And you coming out and speaking on that makes you a leader. That's what makes you actually an advocate, because you are brave enough to talk about your story, your injustice, and what needs to change systemically. And so I would tell everyone, if you're coming in, and don't be ashamed of that. Don't come in with your perfection, because what everybody can do is empathize with your pain. That's what makes you real to everyone. So I'd really say focus on that. And when it comes to being a leader, just remember, you have to make sure that everyone's okay. You have to make sure that you're representing everyone. And the one thing that you say can actually transform somebody's life for the good or for the bad. So you want to use it wisely.
Wow. I commend you for your strength and for sharing your story. When you share a story, you receive a story back. So thank you for that, Congresswoman. My next question is merging in between politics and music. So how can artists or those working with artists support those who are working in politics?
Well, I think the marriage is one that's like definitely a match made in heaven, actually, because if you hear about people in music, they always have an avenue, something that they're passionate about, and politicians are very passionate. So I think that I always talk to people in music and say, hey, what are you passionate about? What is your cause, right? What are you into? We just recently had Usher, who was on the Hill, and he was talking about diabetes. So there's a lot of causes out there that we could fight together, that you could fight through your music, but then I can fight systemically by the laws. So partnering the power of their voice and their pen with my pen and my voice is really where we actually see change in our system and our government, but just the trajectory of our country. And I'm so proud about the transformation of music now, where when I grew up, there was Black music and white music. But right now, I don't hear my kids and I don't hear people talking about Black music and white music necessarily. I went to a majority white school, and so they played white music back then. But now you hear Black music everywhere, and everybody's just thinking that it's music. It's not necessarily for a race or a person. And I think that in a divided Congress and a divided political system, the more we have artists stepping up and saying, hey, this is what I'm suffering, and I'm suffering this in the inner city. We're suffering it in rural communities. We're suffering it just as a human nation, human beings. Really, we could start seeing people coming together, because you realize that it's not about your color, it's not about your race, it's not about your gender. We're suffering the same.
Well said, and straight to it. So we are going to create a playlist of the recommendations of yourself and some of your CBC colleagues. Let me know, what are you listening to right now?
So, the song that I love right now is Megan Thee Stallion, I'm Her.
Yes.
Right. I want to sing I'm Her. But yes, I love that song, right? And I love it because even right now, being in Congress, we're breaking down barriers for women. You're seeing the most amount of women you've ever seen. How we look as members of Congress now is different. We get to define who we are in Congress. Even the comment that was made about lashes, like we can show up who we are and still be that person and demand respect as that person. And I think there's a liberation in being able to show up as I am, who I am, even if I choose, because you're seeing more women now who are going into Congress, who are having babies while they're in Congress, where there was a time when they said, you don't go to Congress until you're done and you're older. But now we can come in as who we are, with our kids, without our kids, married, unmarried, and be who we are. And so that's why I really like I'm Her, but I also like the empowerment of it at this time, where you have a rising group that's trying to take away abortion access to contraceptives, access to even, embryos, and us taking power and control over our own lives and saying, hey, I struggled having a baby, but now I'm actually going to go and get some help and do some IVF, right? So you have people who don't know what it feels like to be a woman, doesn't know what it feels like to live in this body, coming in, telling us what to do. And so I really like Her. The second one I love also is $1 Million Baby. Love that song.
Oh, yep. I mean, you're on it. I love both of those songs too. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Cherfilus-McCormick. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, learning from you, and celebrating Black Music Month together in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.